Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever stared at your phone wondering what his messages really mean, listen closely, because the signs you're missing aren't in the big romantic gestures. They're in the tiny, effortless ways he texts you when he thinks you're not paying attention. The quiet check-ins, the unexpected follow-ups, the moments he reaches out not to impress you, but because he can't help but stay connected. Before you assume he's only half in, you need to hear the truth. The way he's texting you might be revealing a level of emotional investment far deeper than you ever realized. When you're trying to understand someone's intentions, it's easy to obsess over the wrong signals. We replay conversations in our minds, dissect every emoji, agonize over each pause between messages. And yet, there are moments, subtle, almost unremarkable moments, when someone reveals far more than we realize. If he texts you like this, he's more invested than you think. There's a particular kind of message that comes from a man who is genuinely connected to you. It's not the grand declaration or dramatic confession. It's the thoughtful check-in. How did your meeting go? You mentioned you were stressed. Are you doing okay now? Did you ever end up trying that recipe you told me about? These are small in size but huge in intention. They show he listens, remembers, and circles back. Anyone can send a hey. It takes a man who's paying attention to send a message that proves he's storing emotional details about your life. That's not casual interest, that's investment. Investment also shows up in the pace of the conversation. When a man is more invested than you think, he doesn't just start conversations, he continues them. Not in a way that feels needy or overwhelming, but in a way that feels steady and reliable. He picks up your last thread. He follows the story. He adds energy where you left off. Conversation isn't something he dips into when he's bored. It's a space he keeps warm because you're in it. He wants to share life with you, not just flirt with you between errands. Then there's the vulnerability. A man who's invested lets his guard down in ways he doesn't with the rest of the world. Maybe it's subtle. Maybe it's the moment he admits he had a hard day. Maybe it's when he opens up about something he fears, something he hopes for, something he's working on. He's not dumping emotional weight on you. He's simply letting you see a glimpse of the man behind the armor. When he allows that window to open even a little, it's because he trusts you with that view. Trust is sexy, trust is rare, and trust doesn't happen with someone he sees as temporary. He also texts with a sense of presence. You know that energy when someone responds not just quickly but with substance, when he answers with thought rather than autopilot, when he gives you a piece of himself in every exchange, when you feel like he's genuinely there, not multitasking you into the background of his day. Presence can't be faked. Presence is one of the clearest signs that you have someone whose emotional attention has already turned toward you. Another hallmark, future pacing. If he mentions things you could do together, not fantasies, not empty platitudes, but real simple, we should try that place, or next time you're here, I want to show you something. He's subtly weaving you into his vision of life. He may not say it outright, but he's imagining you as part of something beyond this week. A man who sees you as passing entertainment does not picture you in his Thursdays. A man who is invested does. Let's talk consistency. Investment is not measured in intensity, but in reliability. Some men come in like a storm, loud, dramatic, intoxicating, but vanish the moment the spark turns into something steady. That's not investment, that's novelty. The man who's more invested than you think is the one whose effort has rhythm, the one whose messages don't drop off once he wins a little of your affection, the one who doesn't use silence as a power move, the one who makes communication feel safe because he's not making you guess your worth. And here's something women often overlook. His communication grows as his comfort with you grows. A man who is emotionally invested often becomes more talkative over time, not less. He starts sending you random thoughts, jokes, updates about his day. He starts sharing things he normally wouldn't think to share with someone he doesn't care about. You start to get the in-between moments, the small things, the unfiltered things, the things that show you he's letting you into his real world, not just the curated version. There's also the shift in tone. You know the difference between a man who's flirting with you for fun and a man who actually cares how his words land. When he's invested, his messages feel warm, considerate, protective in the healthiest sense. He cares if something upsets you. He takes responsibility for misunderstandings. He clarifies instead of escalating. He treats you like someone whose feelings matter, not like someone he can shrug off because there will always be another conversation somewhere else. Let's not ignore the initiative. When a man is invested, he doesn't leave all the emotional labor to you. He reaches out without waiting for you to break the silence. He follows up without you prompting him. He shows enthusiasm without you having to drag it out of him. He doesn't treat you like an optional accessory. He treats you like someone he genuinely wants in his world. The balance of effort becomes a two-way street, not a one-sided chase. What's most important here is that you learn to recognize this, not because you need validation from his behavior, but because you deserve to see the difference between real emotional presence and crumbs of attention. When a man is texting you with consistency, substance, curiosity, and emotional openness, that is not casual. That is not accidental. Men are not mysterious creatures who randomly turn into great communicators without meaning to. When he is invested, it shows, even if he hasn't said the full truth of his feelings yet. But here's the part no one tells you. Seeing his investment is only half the story. The other half is how you respond to it. When a man begins to invest, your instinct might be to pull back to protect yourself, to assume he doesn't mean it, to worry you're reading too much into it, to downplay it because you've been disappointed before. But the truth is, the right man's investment grows when it meets a confident, grounded, receptive energy. Not chasing, not overgiving, not trying to prove you're worthy. Just showing up as yourself, with standards, with softness, with clarity. You're not meant to decode every message like it's a puzzle. You're meant to notice the pattern, feel the energy behind it, and decide whether this aligns with the life and love you're building. Because when he texts you like this, when his words show consistency, curiosity, and emotional presence, there's a good chance he's already far more invested than you think. And when you start to recognize those patterns, something powerful happens. You stop basing your worth on what someone might feel and start acknowledging what someone is already showing you. Because investment isn't always loud, it isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's a quiet, steady force revealing itself through the way he treats you, the way he prioritizes you, the way he chooses to stay connected, even on days that aren't convenient or glamorous. When a man is more invested than you think, it often shows in the way he navigates challenges with you. Maybe there's a moment of miscommunication, something small that could easily spiral into confusion or distance. But instead of withdrawing, instead of brushing it aside or pretending nothing happened, he leans in. He wants to understand. He wants to fix the tension, not escape it. He texts with clarity, not defensiveness. He tries to clean up the emotional space because the connection matters to him. A man who doesn't care won't bother. A man who does care will try every time. You may notice he begins to integrate you into different layers of his life, not in dramatic leaps, but in these gentle, incremental ways. He might text you about something his best friend said, or ask your opinion on a decision he's making at work. He might send you a picture of the random thing he's cooking just because he wants to share the moment with you. These aren't grand gestures, but they are real gestures, moments that say, "I want you to be a witness to my life." A man doesn't do that unless he has already opened emotional space for you. And it's not just what he shares, it's how he engages with what you share. When he's more invested than you think, he doesn't skim your thoughts like bullet points. He digests them. He responds in ways that deepen the conversation rather than flatten it. If you tell him about your dreams, he asks questions. If you reveal something vulnerable, he holds it gently. If you share a win, he celebrates with you. His texts become a mirror, reflecting back the value he sees in you, not because he thinks he's supposed to, but because your inner world actually matters to him. Something else you might notice is the way he begins to show emotional concern without overstepping. Maybe he senses that you're quiet. Maybe your tone shifts. Maybe you sound overwhelmed. A man who's invested pays attention to the emotional temperature of your messages. He doesn't overreact, but he doesn't ignore it either. He checks in. He makes space for you to open up. He doesn't push, he invites. And that invitation says more than any three-word confession ever could. Your feelings matter here. That's what investment looks like. He also begins to reveal his thoughtfulness in the way he supports your independence. This is something many women overlook. A man who is invested doesn't feel threatened by your passions, your goals, or your happiness outside the relationship. In fact, he encourages it. He'll text you before a big moment, not because he wants attention, but because he genuinely believes in you. He'll celebrate the parts of you that don't involve him, because his investment isn't about control, it's about connection. Encouragement, not possession, is the language of someone who sees your value clearly. Another sign shows up in his curiosity. A man who's more invested than you think doesn't just ask the big questions, he asks the specific, nuanced ones. He wants to understand how you think, what shaped you, what you want for your future. He notices your contradictions and finds them intriguing rather than confusing. He sees the layers you rarely show and wants to explore them slowly, respectfully. This kind of curiosity isn't performance, it's a reflection of his emotional pull toward you. When a man is invested, your mind becomes just as attractive to him as your presence. And sometimes investment shows in restraint, when he wants to say something vulnerable but hesitates because he wants to say it right, when he's careful not to overstep your boundaries, when he takes time to choose words that honor you rather than firing off impulsive emotional reactions. That self-awareness, that emotional discipline, that desire to protect the connection rather than jeopardize it, those are signs of someone who cares deeply. Men who aren't invested don't worry about preserving the emotional foundation. Men who are invested build on it intentionally. Then there's the effort he puts in during the quiet stretches. Not the early, exciting phase when everything feels electric. Not the late-night conversations fueled by chemistry. But the normal days, the days when life is busy, stressful, or unremarkable. When a man is more invested than you think, he shows up even in the monotony. He doesn't disappear because nothing dramatic is happening. He doesn't treat communication like a chore or a placeholder. He stays connected because you've become a part of his routine, a meaningful part. Investment isn't shown in the highlights, it's shown in the steadiness. Another place you'll see his investment is in the way he adjusts. When something matters to you, he remembers. When something bothers you, he grows. When you express a need, he tries to meet it, not perfectly, not instantly, but sincerely. Men who don't care stay exactly the same. Men who are invested evolve in ways that make the connection stronger. He may not verbalize it, but his texting style begins to shift. Less ambiguity, more clarity, less fluctuation, more stability, less ego, more empathy. That's not coincidence, that's care. You might also notice that he initiates deeper conversations at unexpected moments. Maybe he asks how you feel about relationships. Maybe he brings up something about compatibility. Maybe he explores what you're looking for, not because he's pushing for an answer, but because he's thinking about where things could go. A man who's only interested casually avoids these topics. A man who's invested starts placing small markers on the emotional map, making sure you're walking in the same direction. Even the humor changes. When he's invested, he becomes more playful with you, more relaxed, more open to being silly or teasing you in ways that feel safe and affectionate. He's not performing coolness anymore, he's just being himself, and he wants to be himself with you. When a man lets down the performance mask, when he stops worrying about impressing you and starts enjoying you, That's when you know his heart has already shifted. You'll also feel his investment in the way he handles distance, physical or emotional. If you've been busy, he doesn't punish you with withdrawal. If you express a need, he doesn't dismiss it. If something feels off, he doesn't vanish. He brings steadiness to the space because he values the connection more than he values temporary ego boosts. His actions become less about protecting himself and more about protecting what the two of you are building, even if you're not calling it anything yet. And there's the way he remembers the little things you didn't think were important. The coffee order you mentioned once, the story about your childhood, the thing you said you wanted to try someday, the insecurity you whispered under your breath. He brings them up later, not to impress you, but because they live in his mind. A man who doesn't care forgets what doesn't serve him. A man who is invested absorbs what matters to you because it matters to him too. Eventually, you start to feel a shift in the emotional energy between you, a certain ease, a certain warmth, a certain sense that he's not going anywhere. His messages start to carry a tone you can't quite define but can absolutely feel, an emotional anchoredness, a presence, a sincerity that's impossible to fake. And suddenly you realize that while you were overanalyzing his words, he was quietly building a connection through his actions, through consistency, through openness, through effort, through care. When a man texts you like this, he's not playing, he's not entertaining himself, he's not killing time, he's building something, sometimes slowly, sometimes cautiously, but always intentionally. And the more you pay attention to these signals, the more empowered you become, because you stop chasing uncertainty and start recognizing genuine emotional investment when it's right in front of you. And sometimes the truth is simple, he's already far more invested than you think, and his messages have been telling you the story all along. And as you begin to see these layers reveal themselves, you also start to understand something about the nature of genuine interest. It doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle shift in energy, a softness in tone, a quiet kind of loyalty that builds message by message. When he's more invested than you think, it's not usually because he's saying big romantic things. It's because he's laying emotional bricks in small, consistent ways that form the foundation of something real. One of the clearest places this shows up is in the timing of his messages. Not the speed, not the frequency, those can be influenced by work, stress, or life, but the intentionality. He texts you during moments he doesn't have to. Maybe he reaches out before a long meeting. Maybe he sends a quick note during a busy day just to say he's thinking of you. Maybe he pops up late at night to share a thought he didn't want to forget. This isn't about availability, it's about priority. When someone carves out space for you in the cracks of their day, it's because you've become someone he doesn't want to go too long without connecting to. You'll also notice a difference in how he responds to your boundaries. When a man is more invested than you think, he doesn't push past your comfort zones. He respects your pace. He doesn't guilt you for needing space, nor does he punish you with silence if you're honest about something that feels uncomfortable. He adapts, he listens, he adjusts his communication to match your emotional bandwidth. That kind of emotional maturity is one of the strongest signs of real investment, because it shows he's not just looking for what he can get, he's invested in what the two of you can build without forcing anything. Another sign is the way he starts to seek your perspective. He values how you think, how you interpret the world, how you handle challenges. So he might ask you things like, "What would you do in this situation?" Or, "Can I get your take on something?" These aren't random questions, they're invitations. They reveal that he sees you as someone whose insight strengthens his life. When a man is invested, your mind becomes an anchor for him. He wants you involved in the narrative of his life, not because he needs your approval, but because your perspective genuinely matters to him. And then there's the sweet, subtle shift that happens when he begins to share his victories with you. Not because he wants to boast, but because you're someone he wants to celebrate with. Maybe he texts you the moment he gets good news. Maybe he sends you a message that says, "Guess what just happened?" That exhale of excitement directed toward you is not random. People naturally turn to the person who makes them feel understood. When you become that person for him, before he's even said anything romantic, that's a strong indicator of deeper emotional investment. Another layer appears in the way he anchors memories between you. He might reference a joke from earlier in the week. He might bring up something you said that made him laugh. He might weave your shared moments into future plans without even thinking about it. These callbacks aren't accidental. They show he's paying attention, collecting these moments, storing them in a place that matters. When a man starts building a private world of shared references with you, he's investing emotionally, whether he says it or not. There's also the way he steadies himself in moments when you're unsure. Maybe you're having a stressful day and you pull back a little. Maybe you're overthinking something between you. Maybe you're afraid of misreading the situation. A man who's more invested than you think won't let the connection wobble just because you have a moment of vulnerability. He'll offer reassurance, not through grand declarations, but through calm, consistent communication. His steadiness becomes a source of grounding for you, not pressure. And then comes the moment when he starts to open emotional windows into his dreams, not the public ones he shares with everyone, but the private ones, the ones that matter, the ones he usually keeps guarded. When he begins texting you about his long-term goals, his fears, his hopes, his aspirations, that's not casual. Men don't hand out the blueprint to their inner world to someone they don't see meaning in. When he pulls back the curtain like that, it's because he sees emotional safety with you. And emotional safety is one of the strongest indicators of real investment. There's also a shift in how he reacts when you set standards. When a man is not invested, he withdraws at the first sign of boundaries. But a man who is more invested than you think leans in. If you express what you need, whether it's clarity, consistency, or respect, he doesn't get defensive. He tries to meet it, not out of obligation, but because he wants to. Investment makes a man rise, not retreat. When he shows he's willing to elevate his behavior, even in small ways, that's a sign his emotions are already involved. You may also notice he begins to reveal more of his daily life without being prompted. He tells you where he's heading, what he's doing, what he's excited about, what's on his mind. Not in a controlling or performative way, but because communicating with you has become natural. You've become part of the rhythm of his day. He doesn't want to leave gaps between you. He wants to stay connected. Another sign appears in the way he handles conflict, especially small, fixable disagreements. When a man is invested, he doesn't weaponize silence. He doesn't stonewall. He doesn't pick fights to create drama. He seeks resolution. His texts become more intentional during these moments, not less. He wants to understand, not dominate. He wants harmony, not victory. He wants the connection to remain intact, not fractured. That kind of emotional responsibility is one of the clearest signs of deeper feelings. And then there's the undeniable shift in the energy of his compliments. They become less about your surface and more about your character. He notices your strength, your compassion, your humor, your resilience. He acknowledges the parts of you that you don't always think people see. A man who is only casually interested keeps compliments easy and predictable. A man who is invested sees your depth and can't help but reflect it back to you. You might catch glimpses of another indicator. He remembers your emotional patterns, when you usually wake up, when you're busiest, when you tend to get overwhelmed, when you like quiet moments, when you're most talkative, not because he's tracking you, but because your emotional rhythm matters to him. He texts in ways that align with the flow of your life. He adapts without making it obvious. That subtle attunement is not accidental. It's emotional intelligence directed towards someone he truly cares about. Another powerful sign is when he begins taking small emotional risks. Maybe he sends something a little vulnerable. Maybe he expresses appreciation for you. Maybe he admits he looks forward to talking to you. These may seem like tiny things, but they require emotional courage. When a man starts taking emotional risks through text, it means he's already more invested than he's letting on. You'll also feel it in the way he shows consistency, even when the initial excitement settles. Most men can communicate well during the spark phase, but the man who's invested continues to show up even as the novelty fades. He keeps making effort. He stays intentional. He remains curious. He doesn't shrink the moment things require emotional depth. That consistency is the purest form of investment because it's not driven by chemistry, it's driven by care. And then there's the way he talks about time, not just the present moment, but the future, not necessarily in romantic language, but in ways that subtly include you. Maybe he mentions a concert months away. Maybe he brings up a seasonal activity he wants to try with you. Maybe he says something like, "You'd love this place." These are emotional seeds. He's imagining a future where you're next to him and he's dropping hints without even realizing it. Ultimately, when a man texts you like this, you begin to feel something calmer, steadier, and more undeniable than infatuation. You feel his presence. Not forced, not performative, just real, consistent, intentional. And even if he hasn't said anything concrete yet, the emotional truth is already there in the way he shows up, in the way he listens, in the way he makes you feel safe, seen, and significant without even naming it.